Hey everybody, welcome to the People and Perks podcast, where each week we sit down with an employee benefits vendor to give you the best insights for the best benefits on the market so you can make better decisions for your people. I'm Sean, founder of Perkwise, the UK's first employee benefits discovery and review platform.
And I'm Adam. I'm a consultant here at Wingate Benefit Solutions. And today we're joined by Gavin from Equipsme. Great to have you on. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Nice to meet you guys. Yep,
Yeah,
looking forward to this.
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Gavin. How long have you been around in the industry? All that sort of stuff.
Gosh, a long time. My background is AXA Health. I joined AXA Health many years ago, just at the height of the financial crisis. I moved from banking and mortgages into health insurance. I was at AXA for around 10 years. And we were part of the original team that built Equipsme from within AXA. So my sort of job title is co-founder and distribution director. I was part of the original team that built Equipsme, and then we span out and started trading as Equipsme in March 2018.
I was going to say, I was trying to think how old I was when the financial crisis hit, but we'll leave that off.
Yeah, I've got a few stories about Lehman Brothers and the collapse of Lehman Brothers, but again, I'm showing my age now. So
awesome. So today we're going to talk about is private medical becoming unsustainable for employers? And I think from my perspective, we've seen what's been going on in the market for the last few years, especially post-COVID. I would say pressures on the NHS are becoming or have been a real issue over the last couple of years, more, which I guess has resulted in more people getting access to private healthcare. The challenge then becomes is that as more people get access, more claims, more instances of, claims that cost a lot more money for insurers, medical inflation. We're seeing premiums, year on year over the last few years is probably 15 to 20% increases, whilst employers are already under pressure with lots of changes from the government, NI, et cetera. We've seen, a lot of challenges when it comes to budgets for PMI. Gavin, what do you think? What have you been seeing?
yeah, I think I completely agree. I think we've had about 3 years in traditional private medical insurance. We've had 3 years of double-digit increases. I think we're all aware of the horror stories of 50, 60, even higher than that price increases, and then you have to question the sustainability of that for the current membership and expanding it out to the wider workforce. So at Equipsme, we've always been about the wider uninsured workforce. And I would dare say that I think private medical insurance has been unsustainable for a long time. If you look at how many people have health insurance provided by their business, then there's 80% that are uninsured. There's only 4.7 million people that are currently working have private medical insurance provided by their business. So, there's a huge gulf in terms of people that haven't got access to basic health insurance. But we're seeing lots of businesses. We're having some interesting conversations, as I'm sure you are, Adam, around the sustainability of the products longer term. People are reviewing their options. We never set out to sort of cannibalize, if you like, private medical insurance. It's always been the preserve of senior management. But we are seeing businesses that are thinking, £1,500 to £2,000 a head is, something's got to give. We can't carry on.
Yeah, definitely. And let's talk a little bit around, I guess, why we've been seeing these increases. Because like you rightly say, historically, PMI is for your exec teams in an organization. It might not be readily available to everyone because of the cost of it, right?
Yes.
That's the main reason it's not wildly rolled out. But I guess the increases we've been seeing, like you say, double digits year on year, if not more. What's causing that? Like, why has there been a bit of a shift in terms of those increases that we've seen in the market?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic. I mean, obviously, there's 1.7 million people that have bought the product themselves. 4.7 million people have it provided by their business. So, you've got record numbers of people that have private medical insurance. I'm not here, to stick the boot in with the NHS. We all love the NHS, me included. I've used it. I've got family members that have used it. It's saved their life. It's it's part of our DNA. I'm not here to criticise the NHS, but it is under significant pressure. I mean, just, quite interesting for us to reflect. When we started Equipsme, the NHS waiting list was at an all-time record high at 4.3 million. It's now 7.3 million, and it's just, I can't see it getting any better. Therefore, people want health insurance. They're buying it themselves. They're asking their businesses for health insurance benefits for themselves and family members. And I think, 1 in 10 or 1 in 8 people have got a bit of a horror story of being stuck in the system. And then overlay that on the top, you've got pressures in, basic GP primary care. So if someone walks through the door, the first question they're going to ask them is, have you got private medical insurance? Because I can make this go faster for you. And it's just creating and forcing more people into the private sector. And then, lo and behold, more people are using it, prices go up, and that's where you get your double, triple digit increases year on year.
I guess, we'll talk a little bit about your solution in a minute. The main, I guess, so when we look at claims instance, claims cost, what would you say are the main contributors to that? Like, have we seen anything in the market that says it's this area that we're seeing more claims or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point. I think we're all aware in the industry, whether you're an advisor or you're a HR reward professional, I think most people understand that, large ticket items like full cancer treatment, actual cost of cancer treatment, for instance, that is always in the headlines because it's a very, very expensive thing to actually fund. Then you've got sort of psychiatric treatment as well. If you include full psychiatric treatment, that will have an impact on your claims, impact. I think if you look at most private medical insurance policies, and the same with Equipsme, we see things like musculoskeletal high on the agenda. MSK, if you look at all the stats from the ONS in terms of how many days of loss to productivity, for instance, MSK is higher than mental health. 10% of all sickness absence in 2024 was MSK related. So if you look at all of those MI reports, MSK is always at the top. And then, you've got a whole range of issues that are impacting the workplace. Cost of treatment is obviously going up. But I did spot something interesting in the market, sort of within the trade press and magazines during the week, which suggested, don't add family members to a PMI policy. Don't add dependents, because dependents are claiming, and that's having a detrimental impact on PMI. I think that's, that shows you a concern where you get to that level where you have to strip out a partner, or you have to talk about removing people from the plan because it's having a detrimental impact on PMI. I mean, that's quite a sad state of affairs.
Wow. Yeah.
At Equipsme, we actively promote family members to join. And in certain cases, we've got 35% of employees have added family members, have upgraded or, added their kids. We view things very, very differently to the traditional PMI. But when I read that during the week, I thought, well, that's a real sad state of affairs. You have to time to take the wife off. It's terrible.
Yeah, definitely. I would echo that, because I spoke to a client only this week who've seen huge increases, not, for reasons we've already discussed, but also the fact that they've been using the policy quite heavily. And their mind, because of budgets, their mind straight went to, well, what can we take out? Like, what can we do? We have to have these people on. Like, if people got kids, we can take off now. Like, and
Yeah.
you really don't want to be having that conversation.
No, and I completely agree, Adam. I'm well aware. I talk to lots of advisors, and they come to us and say, "Look, I'm working with a client at the moment. They've got unsustainable private medical insurance. What they're going to do is look at your product, maybe pull out of the market altogether, because no one wants to see that, or strip it back, like you say, strip it back." And I've seen people, literally remove, full cancer treatment, put a £500 excess on, reduce the diagnosis rate, and then you're like, well, what is this for? It is no longer practical day-to-day help and support to try and get people back into work. It is literally now designed for absolute emergencies, like you do on the tube, push this lever if in case of emergency. Now, if you look at the cost to businesses and the cost of doing nothing, as we say, is quite staggering. It's an £85 billion cost to the UK business of not having health insurance. Going back to that 80% uninsured, we're not like Europe, where Germany, Netherlands have mandated health insurance, and it has an impact on business productivity. Having someone stuck in the system is no good for you, no good for them, no good for the family. Productivity is going to suffer. But stripping it back, having PMI, stripping it so far back that no one can actually use it, what's the point?
It sounds like almost we're in like there's a perfect storm where we have premiums are getting too expensive for employers to be able to afford. You've got these waiting lists that are now at 7 million for NHS. Like you just mentioned, traditional it's almost like traditional PMI is kind of under strain a bit. And so I guess the question comes like, well, what's the alternative? Like, what's the other path path forward here?
Yeah, I think, private medical insurance, let's be honest. I mean, private medical insurance, if businesses could afford to offer private medical insurance for everybody, provide full cancer cover, absolute maximum peace of mind, which business wouldn't want to do that? But the challenge is always trying to, square the circle. I'm not necessarily a fan of those types of analogies and phrases, but something's got to give, and I think you can't carry on paying £1,500 to £2,000 per person per year and still trade, comfortably. Some businesses are on wafer thin margins. We're well aware of that, but without sort of making it a plug necessarily about what Equipsme does. But we did start with a blank piece of paper to try and do something different. So going back to when we did all our research in AXA, we knew at the time when we were doing our research in 2017, 2018, that there's only less than 400,000 SMEs in the UK that have health insurance, as in have PMI for that business. So they may insure the senior management, the directors, the family business, the family owners of that business. But there's only 400,000-ish businesses out of 5.7 million SMEs in the UK that have private medical insurance. So it was quite strange to us as a business when you look at it. I know we were working in the industry, but when you take a step back, we provide, businesses got cyber cover, fleet insurance, public liability, employer liability, goods in transit insurance, but you don't insure your people, which is your biggest asset. And I think, we decided to do something very, very different. We started with a blank piece of paper. We put businesses in rooms and we hid behind a one-way mirror, and we literally asked them to rip apart traditional private medical insurance and sort of use flashcards and tell us what is it that you want. Tell us what you want over and above the NHS. How do you want it to work? What do you want to pay for as well? So we got a starting price point out of them. And then we built something that's really simple and easy to use.
And I guess that's a perfect segue then. So What is it about Equipsme that is different from, let's say, your traditional PMI? Like, how is it that what is the proposition you've built?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and I think, as I say, I'll start by, we're not here to disrupt private medical insurance. It's not what we set out to achieve. We're all about the wider uninsured workforce. But going back to the original headline, I do think private medical insurance is unsustainable because the 80% of people that haven't got it at the moment. So we set out to do something very different for the uninsured population. You can't carry on paying 1,500 to 2,000, so something's got to give. So we did all the research, and what we've built is something that's very simple. So we've got 4 plan levels. We made it nice and simple for people to quote, because we're consumers at the end of the day. And one of the things that really bugged us is you see things advertised that prices start from £99. You then fill in a form, someone phones you, harasses you over the phone, calls you about 50 times, and they say, it's not £99, it's 996. So, we wanted to provide price certainty. We've got 4 levels of cover, all ages, all employees cost the same anywhere in the UK. You can start people off from £9 a month all the way up to 69. We provide a basic entry package to sort of get people started. If they want to upgrade, they can upgrade. So you're sort of co-paying, and that works for smaller businesses that might not be able to provide full insurance, but it gets them started. It gives them some access to private medical, and then they can upgrade. Our plans include GP access, musculoskeletal MSK. Again, we know that is one of the biggest reasons why people are off work. We look after lots of blue collar workers, and that type of product was really key when we did all our research. We've got well-being perks and all the usual sort of added value bits so that people get something on day one. We provide hospital diagnosis, private consultations, and hospital treatment. So it is very much like often described as like a PMI light, because we don't provide full cancer treatment because that's too expensive. We don't provide the full psychiatric treatment cost. Going into the Priory, for example, is too expensive. We've built something that's practical, usable, that you can use every day, that supports your team. And from a business perspective, you're looking after them, but you're also getting them back into work as fast as possible, because having people stuck in the system will ultimately impact your business performance, productivity, and overall performance, and whether you'll make it. In certain cases, some businesses will struggle this year and the next couple of years. It's tough trading. We genuinely want to help people look after their people.
Thanks so much for sharing that about Equipsme. I think it's going back to what you said earlier around pricing, I think is actually so important, and it's something that a lot of people underestimate, like how important it is just to have pricing on your website, and just having that level of transparency is just so important in the industry. When I was doing my research for PerkWise, I think I saw that you were actually the only provider on the in the PMI space that actually shows their pricing up front. And yeah, just wondering why you think that is in the industry, why people are reluctant to show their pricing up front, and yeah, if you could just talk a bit about that.
Yeah, no problem. I think it's a very interesting point. I think it goes back to our noble purpose. We wanted to do something that was clear, very transparent, easy to use. In our research, in our time at AXA, we knew that about 70% of businesses had considered private medical insurance, but then lots of those had dismissed it. And the surprise, they dismissed it primarily on the actual cost. There is an element of complexity. Some private medical insurance policies, you have to put dates of birth for every member, and obviously it's sort of either age band or it's priced based on individual ages. So we're all about trying to build something that's easy to use, easy to understand, and build trust. And it also, there is an element of our business model We wanted to provide something that was so easy that you could quote, and that you didn't then need loads of admin people to provide a quote and, prepare something and then email out. When I first went into private medical insurance, there were literally people typing up quotes, and we wanted to provide something that was efficient, digital, easy to use, and obviously all of that flows back into the client. So, we don't want to employ 50 people, preparing quotes, because that's an unnecessary cost to our business, but we're passing all of that on to the end user. But I think for a large part of it was pure trust. We hate the idea of advertising a price and then misleading people. We're very clear, we're very transparent, we're very upfront. We don't provide cancer treatment. We would fully diagnose, we will help you, we'll provide as much information as possible, but cancer treatment is not provided. If you're looking for that type of product, then it's over there, it's something else, and it's called traditional private medical insurance. So, we just want to be clear, and that when people come and see us, when they find us online, they go, actually, yeah, this is what I've been looking for. I've been looking for something that provides my team with more than a cash plan, but not as expensive for private medical insurance. That's usually how the conversations start. But it's a business philosophy, I guess. We just want to be clear, transparent, and build trust with people.
And just on that, so a couple of things you said there, Gavin. So what about from a sustainability point of view? Because we've all seen providers where you might get given your cost per person per month at the start, and then at the renewal in a year's time, all of a sudden there's a big increase. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And that's something that we are very, very conscious of, but also very proud of. That was one of the things that we had in our sites when we first launched. We did all our research. Clients told us what they wanted over and above the NHS. They gave us a range of price points. And then, lo and behold, 8 years later, what people are actually buying is about 80% there. So in terms of price points, I'll come back to that in a few minutes. But from a sustainability perspective, the way we've built the product, we have an open referral model. So you need an open referral letter from your GP or our GP service. So you can't go to all the expensive Harley Street, clinics and hospitals, all the expensive things. Surprise, surprise. So it's an open referral model. We have a simple 3-year pre-existing exclusion. So anything people have had in those 3 years prior to joining is excluded. And again, that's all very transparent. We don't hide anything. We don't provide the cancer treatment, but we would fully diagnose. And by having those range of prices, what we see is that businesses are looking after or more of the workforce. They're tending to cover more of the wider workforce. Where you've got, for argument's sake, 20 people on private medical insurance, we typically see 200 people. So there's normally that type of ratio. 10 on private medical insurance, then there's another 100 with nothing, or 20 and 200, that type of ratio. So you're looking after the wider workforce, but that could also include youngsters. We've got, young people on our plan, and we're looking after everybody in that business. It's equitable. Businesses really like that. I'm going to buy everybody this plan, and it's going to one price for everybody in that business. But overall, if you add all of these things together, as we've evolved over time, we've got a younger demographic than you would find under a traditional private medical insurance policy. You've got the whole of workforce, you've got family members, and then some businesses have got different people on different levels. We don't dictate. So you can genuinely put all of your apprentices on one level, all of your senior management on a higher level. So it's very, very flexible. But overall, this is the thing that I'm really proud of, is that we've delivered something that works. Our average price increases have only gone up about 5% year on year since we started trading in 2018. So, if you look at the average UK salary now, the cost of one of our products, which is diagnosis, it's £288. that equates to about 0.75% of payroll. It's broadly the same as it was when we launched, because back in the day, the average UK salary was 28,000. So if you looked at the price point then versus the average salary, it's not really shifted. The world and inflation has gone up, but we've stayed in that middle, in that more affordable bracket. And our most popular plan is £504 per employee per year. That's gone up 5% on average since 2018. And this year, it's gone up by just £1 per person per month. That's 2.5%. Because of that broader whole of workforce, we're community rated. All our members pay the same. And we say, the safety in numbers, and it spreads the risk. It's pooled, it's spreading the risk.
Yeah.
And that's the outcome for the businesses.
And that's, I guess, how you build that trust and that credibility, isn't it, over time? Because ultimately, if a business has been with you for the last 5, 6, 7 years, they're not getting any shocks. They're getting the same core cover that everybody's using and doing really well with. So I think it's a great model to have, especially that transparency, because it's so rare in our world nowadays that it is that transparent.
Well, my background is banking and insurance, and they are the least trusted industries. I've not worked in estate agents, but we all know. We all know businesses have a bad reputation and not very trusted. We genuinely want to help people. We want to be trusted and be very transparent and clear and upfront.
Let's just talk about cancer for a minute, because I do see that as a real key differentiator. If a company is considering, PMI, they're worried about budgets, but then they look at Equipsme and you have this, we don't provide cancer treatment. I think some employers might think, oh God, no, we can't, put something in place and then people don't get treated for cancer. But actually, I think the journey that you've built is quite smart. Can you tell us a little bit around like what it looks like for someone?
Yep, absolutely. So again, times have changed, Adam, in terms of when we first launched, lots of businesses said, well, I want to provide full private medical insurance. And then COVID hit, and then claims have gone through the roof and everyone's, buying private medical insurance, and the waiting lists are where they are. So, and we're often asked, would you add in a cancer treatment product? And our answer to that is quite simply no, because, in all our research way back when we started, all the research is that diagnosis is key. The faster you diagnose, the better the outcome. Simple as that. The life expectancy is higher, you get to it quicker. There is an established pathway in the NHS. I know the headlines are often quite negative, but once you can diagnose, then you're in the system, and there is a duty of care and there is a pathway to treatment. Cancer can obviously also be very, very complicated. There are certain cancers that are quite routinely dealt with. So again, if you can diagnose, then you're into the system, and they've got the infrastructure, they've got the resources. And again, some cancers are very, very complex, and you're better in the NHS because that's the best place to be. Now, although we don't do the cancer treatment, we do promote and we do look after people as best as possible with a diagnosis. So diagnosis has always been covered, and members have the opportunity to go and see a specialist consultant. But last year we introduced 3 pathways. So our plans are underwritten by AXA Health. Our members have access to lots of benefits provided by AXA Health, from specialist consultations, tests and scans, and then hospital treatment as well. But one of the things we introduced was a pathway called Check for Cancer. And in there, you can get, with no GP referral, you can go to see a specialist for breast cancer concerns, skin cancer, and prostate. So you don't need to go to your GP. You don't need to call our GP service. You can go straight to AXA, start the claims process. And then for breast and skin in particular, the intention is to try and get you in front of a specialist clinic or a specialist consultant within about 5 days. I know someone that used the skin cancer pathway recently as an example. They got to a local clinic within 5 days, had a photograph of some skin mole concerns, and then had a proper photograph, had it scanned, and had the results back within 2 days. They said, nothing to worry about, get on with the rest of your life. So within 7 to 8 days, they had all of that stress and anxiety taken care of. Fortunately, there was nothing wrong, but we are very, very proactive on the diagnosis side, because that's absolutely key, always has been. And in any of the Cancer Macmillan, Cancer Research, all of the leading cancer charities advocate early diagnosis, because that makes such a difference.
Are you seeing any other, from speaking with your customers, are there any other like trends or areas that people are asking for to be like for you to have in your product? I know there's nearly every week there's like a new benefits tool on the market or something that's like coming up, or a new app, and like I'm wondering if, are you looking to continuously, add to your product, or if there's anything that, any trends at the moment that people are asking for?
Yeah, again, great question, Sean. Thank you for that. Yeah, likewise, I think there is a new proposition that launches weekly, and then week 2, they try and talk to us. So we get approached as a business at least once, twice a week. Hey, can we add this? We've launched this, and usually, without being really, really cynical, there are certain health related trends in the news, and then literally 6 months later, there's some new app or a startup business, or the latest is everything's AI, pops up with a solution. I mean, if we added all of those, would be, our sort of product sheet and sort of, the benefits table would be, 12 feet long. It's impossible to accommodate everything. We are seriously researching our own product. We like to try and break our own product all the time. We've added things like the cancer pathways. We've also got a couple of other pathways from AXA, which is dermatology, because there is a national shortage of dermatologists. And again, skin related, that's a challenge in the NHS, and digestive issues. So there is another pathway that we added. We're always looking to break our products, but we do have a mantra in the business, is that we won't add anything without proper research. You can't just keep adding more stuff and think you're providing great value, because it clearly might not work for everybody. So we're doing some research with our existing members. We're looking to do some research with some prospects, and we're also talking to some very large corporates just to see exactly what is it that you are looking for as a business, but also what are employees asking for. So we are all ears. There are some really interesting things out there, Sean, but we're not rushing it. We're just trying to do our research. We did a session in November with some of our distributors that sort of advise their clients, as you would do, Adam, advising their clients around the suitability of various products. And some of the best feedback we had was, stick to your knitting, stay where you are, don't overcomplicate it, don't add more stuff in to confuse people. We've carved out a real niche, which is between PMI and a cash plan. So we're in this sort of middle space, PMI light type proposition. Stick to your knitting, keep doing what you're doing, don't overcomplicate it. So I've got that in the back of our minds. I don't want to just keep adding stuff for the sake of it.
And that's, I guess that is so important, because in this market where there is so much that employers could consider, some employers will have a robust suite of benefits, and you have to remember that even for the end user, the employee, that can sometimes be overwhelming, or even just you hear something once and then it's gone.
Yeah.
I think the key thing is just, like you've said, keep it simple. You have carved out this niche, and actually there's such a need for that product, not only in, I guess, the employer market, but even if you think about pressures on the NHS. Like, I think actually the one thing that we haven't really spoken about in too much detail is how Equipsme is almost relieving a little bit of that pressure because of the fact that people can use your service for those private treatments, diagnosis, etc. I think that's a really important thing to hold on to, I guess, with the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, our most popular plan, 60% of our membership is on a plan that provides full diagnosis, scans, MRI, CT, blood tests. There is an excess on that plan, but it also provides private hospital treatment. And for £42 per employee per month, that's £504 a year. So for call it £500 a year, you can look after more people in your organisation. And it will hopefully get people back into work rather than being stuck in the NHS. Again, we're not here to, stick the boot in, because the NHS is fantastic. It's served me well many, many times, but it needs some help, and this can help. It can help get people back into work quicker.
I just want to shift the conversation a bit into 3 favorite letters for every CEO or finance director, ROI. And I read a bit on your website around that Equipsme has a £3 return for every £1 invested. I wonder if you could shed a bit of light on that and just talk a bit about how companies can see an ROI on these investments that they're making.
Yes, that's a very good point. We are currently, anyone go into our website at the moment, if you have a look at it, we do have a white paper. We published that in January 2025 with a business called Fruitful Insights. So those guys specialize in well-being, tracking well-being performance and satisfaction, etc. They've got something like about 700,000 different data points. We wanted to try and do something with those guys, so it was very independent. It's okay doing loads of desk research, and we're bound to say, as Equipsme, we're bound to say if you buy our product, it will pay off and you'll get a return on investment. But we were very, again, talking to lots of clients, especially HR people. They were asking us for, have you got any stats to help me build a business case? I'm trying to get the board or the FD to sign this off. And as you say, Sean, it is pounds, pence, shillings. It's very, very important. And someone recently or last year, they told us, health insurance for the wider workforce is also competing with another piece of plant and machinery. The choice might be, do we offer it health insurance to the wider workforce, or do we buy a new machine, or do we buy a new van or a lorry? So you have to have a clear business case. And that's what we set out to do. So we worked out, the cost of doing nothing, as a reminder, the cost to your business. We think, and we're in the middle of updating the white paper at the moment, we think the average 1 day sickness absence will cost around £466 for 1 day sickness absence, because there's all sorts of knock-on effects. You have to backfill, you have to go overtime, etc., etc. And you've lost that manpower, or you've lost that person for the day. We then quantified that into a return on investment. We know that we can get people back into work quicker, and that white paper that we originally published was, nearly £3 for every £1 invested, and it was very, very conservative. And what we're doing at the moment is reflecting and updating all the numbers. So our prices for our plans have changed slightly, not by much, around 5%. But the UK average salary has gone from around £36,000 a year to nearly over 39,000 since we did that. So we're in the middle of just recalibrating the numbers. That will be published towards the end of February, and without sort of spoiler alert, it's gone up a bit, and it's still £3 to £1 ratio. We're not here to over egg the numbers. I didn't want to put something out that was ludicrous, but it will support and help people. One of our clients recently shared some of their stats. It's a very large corporate. We've been working with them for about 6 months, and then they did an annualized well-being score. They did an employee satisfaction score, and they've also shared some interesting stats on turnover and sickness. So well-being score went up 3%. Employee satisfaction, having rolled our plan out to their wider workforce, their satisfaction score went up 3% to the highest level it's ever been. Turnover has dropped nearly 0.5%, and sickness absence has dropped nearly 0.5%. Now, I'm hoping that that's all down to us, of course, but that is what they were looking for. They bought our plan to be more engaged, to be the employer of choice. All of the things around sickness absence, they knew that would follow. They wanted to just look after people, being a good employer, and then everything else will then take care of itself. And I think that started to happen for them. So there's clearly a return on investment.
And that's the big ticket, isn't it? Like, if you can impact those metrics, even by 0.5%, that can make such a big difference to a business in terms of turnover, profit, all of the things that ultimately businesses are trying to do.
Yes.
So that's great to hear. Thinking about, I guess, the future now, you've touched a little bit on your philosophy and what you take into consideration before you make changes to the proposition. Where do you see the market going? Next 5 years, do you see more of the same? What do you see?
Yeah, I think this is obviously a personal opinion, but I'm a bit of a sado. I do read a lot, and I do sort of try and work out, politically, what's the mood music. And I think the market will carry on growing. But I can't see any government at the moment being brave enough to mandate private medical insurance. So if you look at on the continent, Germany, there's a top up NHS type top up in France, in the Netherlands, it's mandated. I can't see anyone being that brave, because I think businesses have been impacted enough with national insurance increases. I mentioned it earlier. Some businesses are working on wafer thin margins, but I do think if you look at it, the NHS is under significant pressure. Going back to the research when we first started, one of the phrases that was widely used was the NHS is overused and underfunded. That was back in 2017, 2018. I think that's still the case. It's got worse. And I think the government will just let businesses work it out themselves. So what we're seeing is the rise of employee pester power. They're going to the unions. The unions are quite powerful. They're more involved in those types of pay plus benefit discussions than they ever have been. And I think businesses is a bit like the survival of the fittest. If you've got good people, they're performing, they're in business, they're loyal, they're higher productivity, and you're not having people off sick, etc., you will outperform your peers. And I think businesses in this, in the UK, we're like that. We just let businesses work it out themselves without being too sort of dictatorial. So I think the market will grow, but I think it will be painfully slow.
In terms of the PMI product itself, do you expect that to become even more exclusive, or something that's more modular, or do you think something similar to kind of what Equipsme are doing?
I don't know what everyone else is doing in terms of other traditional private medical insurance providers. I'm not quite sure what everyone else is in the market, but we welcome competition. We've seen people come into the market. We've seen some people go back out. They clearly couldn't get it to sort of resonate with what clients were looking for. We grew a lot last year, and we're projected to grow a lot again in 2026. but we do welcome competition because it proves the point around 80% of employees are uninsured. They're asking their employer for solutions. Employers can't afford £1,500 to £2,000 a head because it's just too expensive. So what else is there that could work for them? And we've lost businesses that have said, look, we can't afford what you offer. We've gone for X, and we've only been able to fund £1 per person per month. Well, that it is what it is. But good for you, because at least you've tried to do something for your people. It's better than just being a horrible employer. And, gone are those days. Going back to the research we did, we interviewed hid behind one-way mirrors, and there were businesses in the UK that openly said, I'm never going to buy anything for my people. If they're sick, I'll just replace them with some other person. And I think we're not in that luxurious position anymore. You've got to look after the best people you've got.
Fully.
Feels like there should be a Christmas miracle film to come out to quell those employers who still say that sort of thing. We need more well-being focused companies to come.
We should have done that. We should have done this in December, and then we could have had a Dickensian tale for you. But yeah, I think people, employees have got, everyone's got a story. They've got a family member, that's had a bit of a horror story, and they're putting pressure on their business. And I think that's just the typical British way of letting businesses work it out amongst themselves. But last week, they dismissed the whole concept of PMI auto-enrolment. There was a conference and the pensions minister dismissed it. So I can't see anyone being brave enough to mandate it.
Too big of a change, I think, especially after everything that's gone on recently.
Yeah, and the government's under constant pressure to increase defence spending. There's pressures everywhere, and there isn't enough money to go round. I think they're just going to continue to look for efficiencies in NHS and hope that people buy private medical to relieve some of those waiting lists.
So I guess to finish, Gavin, if there's one thing you want, a HR manager, finance director, business owner to take away from today, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I think from our perspective, again, when we started Equipsme, we were the newest entrant into the market since Vitality back in 2027 when they came into the market. The market is polarized, as in private medical insurance or a cash plan. And there is something different. There is something else in the market, and it's Equipsme. We're in the middle. We're more affordable, we're more sustainable, and we're more flexible than traditional private medical insurance. But the key takeaway for me really is, the sustainability. We've got a track record, but for anyone listening to this, there is another way. There is something else that will work like PMI, but is more sustainable.
Nice. And that's a great point to finish on. So I think, Gavin, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us. It's been really good to hear, obviously, how Equipsme can help businesses across the UK. And I guess for anybody listening, if you want to learn more, head over to the PerkWise website to compare with other products. If you need any advice around your benefits, reach out to us here at Wingate, and we can obviously talk to you about the benefits of working with people like Gavin. So thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Sean.
Cheers.
Thanks, Adam.
Bye.
Take care.